Buyer's market, seller's market, most competitive market around. What exactly are we calling the Denver market these days? Hey everyone, it's Alyson Wahl with Live South Denver, your real estate strategist and realtor for the South Denver area. It is your May market update. Let's get right to the numbers. Buyers put 5,500 homes under contract in April. That is up 3.5% from the year before. It's up 44% from 2 years ago. Of course, not surprising. 2 years ago, we were figuring out what we were going to do next after we got to leave our homes. On an interesting note, for all of the homes that have gone under contract for April, 87% plus of those made it all the way to closing. A more typical number would be 80%. What that's telling us is in the competitive market that we've had this spring, buyers have felt constrained not to give up on a home, even if things came up on inspection. I'll tell you, I even saw this kind of stick-to-itiveness and grit in my buyers in this spring market. We saw 4,900 closings in April. That's actually down 6% from last year, but up 32% from 2 years ago. We've talked a lot about how prices have increased over the last 2 years, so this may not surprise you. 10% of all the closings that happened in April were from the $1 to $2 million price range. This was pretty exciting news. There were 6,500 new homes listed in April. That's a 3.5% increase from the year before. And no surprise here, up 44% from 2 years ago. It is a mixed bag as far as new listings go. For April, it's a great showing. We're the second strongest April in 5 years, but year to date, it's our weakest showing yet. This is the fewest number of listings we've had year to date in the last 5 years. Those new listings helped us improve our inventory as well. We ended April with about 2,700 homes left on the market at the end of the month. That was a difference of 1,200 homes compared to the month before. So that in and of itself is a huge difference. That also means we left April with about 16 days of available inventory. However, that does still leave us with less than a month of inventory, so we continue our streak. Denver is in its 22nd month straight with fewer than 30 days of available inventory on the market. For April, the average days on market, the average it took to sell a home was just 8 days. That's down 3 days from the month before. In March, we'd actually dropped 3 days from the month before that. So the trend was very drastically in the downward direction. An 8-day average days on market is the lowest we've had since we've started keeping records. This time last year, the average days on market was 13. Now, our median days on market, it held steady at 4. It's gonna be hard for us to get shorter than that considering the pattern with which we list homes, the days we let buyers see them, and how quickly we go under contract on those. We usually give it a full weekend for the most part. But just to add a little perspective, nationally, the median days on market has been 34 days. So we have the national average beat by a full 30 days here in the Denver market. All right, let's get to those home prices. So last month we hit the list price to sales price ratio over 106%. We bumped it up a little bit more in April, not really a big surprise because the bidding wars were really so intense in the month of April. We went from 106.4 up to 106.8% on that list price to sales price ratio. Now, for those of you who saw my mid-month market update where I kind of gave you the boots on the ground look and was sharing how the market has shifted in May already, I do expect we're going to see a major shift in this list price to sales price ratio in next month's numbers. It wouldn't surprise me if we're already down to the 103% range. However, April data shows 70% of all homes in the Denver market sold over list price, so this number really is not surprising at all. The average closed price for all homes in April was $719,000. That is up $18,000 from the month before. Compared to a year ago, that's an increase of 18%. And compared to 2 years ago, we're up 45%. Breaking down the average home price by home type, the single family home price average is $818,000 for April, and that's up $25,000 from the month before. Compared to the 2 previous years, the increases are 19% and 49% respectively. Quite a huge jump from 2 years ago in single family home prices, isn't it? The condo and townhome average price is $490,000. That's actually a decrease of $6,000 from the month before. We still are beating hearts, right? A decrease in the average price just by a little bit. However, comparing it to the last 2 years, that average price is up 14% over a year ago and 30% over 2 years ago. All right, let's switch over to those median home prices. I'm always a bit more of a fan of these numbers because they're not heavily skewed by a bunch of homes that might have been sold on the more expensive end of the price range at any given time. They're also a little less daunting. The median sold price of all home types was $617,000 in April. That's up $15,000 from the month before. It's up 19% from a year ago and up 41% from 2 years ago. Median price for a single family home last month, $680,000. That's an increase of $20,000 from the month before, and it's up 18% and 44% respectively over the last 2 years. When we look at condos and townhomes, the median price last month is $437,000, up $17,000 from the month before. Compared to the last 2 years, that is up 18% and 36% respectively. Okay, what are your takeaways? All of these numbers speak to an intense market, big price increases, lots of bidding wars. But for those of you who saw the mid-month market update I did just a couple of weeks ago, know that the market has already softened up. It happened very quickly. It started right at the post-Easter weekend. So we came out of Easter weekend. It was a very tight market, not a lot of inventory. Showings were pulled back. I mean, it's a big family weekend. And then there was a boom of inventory. Buyers did burst back into the market. It was a pretty hectic and fast-paced weekend. And then the weekend after that, the market just really changed very dynamically. And May has been quite different. The last several clients that I have put under contract, we've been able to get under contract at or very close to list price. We have not had to be very generous when it comes to inspection. In fact, we've been able to push back, and the buyer has been able to say, I want these things fixed. Seller, take it or leave it. I may walk away. And the seller has been the one kind of over the barrel, having to give to the buyer. This won't be true in every situation. In fact, I went to schedule a showing this weekend on a home, and Friday was already booked. Back to back, wall to wall. That means over 20 showings on the first day, with some already overflowing into day 2. That house is going to have bidding wars. That means the buyer who gets that house is going to have to give and concede in many ways, like we've seen earlier in the year. So it's not as if the whole entire market is soft and the buyer is winning on every home at every turn, but more generally and in a lot more opportunities, the buyer has the upper hand. And that has not been the case for so much of this year for sure, and over the last 2 years. When we're writing offers at list price, that means there's no appraisal gap coverage. That means the buyer's not offering to cover anything if the appraiser doesn't come back with the value that the contract states that the home has. So then there's going to be some negotiation taking place. That is also something else sellers aren't used to, and that puts the buyer in a stronger position. These are new things to sellers. These changes have come fast and furious to sellers, some of which aren't prepared for the shift and the changes. I have a listing coming up in a couple of weeks. These are sellers who actually bought last year in the hectic pace of the market. They did not have the upper hand to ask for everything that came in on the inspection report. So when they bought the home, there were things still left to be done on the house. As we go to turn around and list the home later this year, we're taking a preemptive strike and making sure the home is going to present as well as it possibly can. Now, that's something I always do with all of my listings. I take pride in having my homes show incredibly well. Agents will actually comment on that when they speak with me about my listings because it's best for the seller. You want to put the best foot forward at all times. And in a market as fast-paced as we've had, sometimes sellers can get away with not doing that work, but you can always get the extra money out of it when you do. But in this shift where buyers can be picky and buyers don't have to overbid on every home, or they can ask for more on inspection, now is the time where it matters how the home is marketed and presented, and the effort and work that goes into the home really matters. With 70% of the homes going under contract with bidding wars in April, that made the Denver market the second hottest market in all of the country last month. Now the market is shifting, and that's true nationwide. We're partly a buyer's market, we're partly a seller's market. If real estate is anything, it's location, location, location. Which market you're in is going to be very dependent on that. Make sure you're connected with someone who's going to be able to help you figure that out. If you have questions or comments about this market, we would love to hear them. Leave a comment below, reach out, connect with us. We'd love to hear from you. Hey, we'll see y'all next week.